Hello and welcome. Welcome to another edition of Atlas Information Live. I am your host, Attlas Alux, and today we're going to be addressing, well, we have our Kali Yuga background. Let's put it that way. Today we're going to be addressing the ominous feeling that many people have that something big is on the horizon, something dire is approaching. And we have a number of different reasons for suggesting that, or for sensing that, for feeling that. And I'm not the only one who feels this way. This seems to be a rather common phenomena right now. And someone was pointing out in response to posting of today's live stream, someone was pointing out that, oh, well, every generation always thinks that it's the end of the world. And there is truth to that. I'm not going to deny that there is always some element of apocalyptic thinking that, let's face it, has been a part of humanity more or less since the time of Christ. Certainly since John of Patmos wrote his famous Revelation, but also the fact that Christ himself said that he would come again during the end times and raise people up and all the rest of it. The fact that the Jews still await their Messiah, and the fact that the Zionist movement is active in its quest to regain full control over Jerusalem and to rebuild the temple and fulfill its prophecy. So there are many, many different angles and many different factions that have been proliferating, propagating, and indeed holding very tightly to apocalyptic beliefs for, as we said, 2,000 years. But what I'm talking about is something a little bit more imminent than that. And it's far more vague. I've spent the last 48 hours looking at what others have been saying, and including prophecies about 2024 that stretch back hundreds of years, going all the way back to Edward Casey and Nostradamus, but also contemporary psychics, contemporary strategists, financial analysts, and even YouTube pundits. There seems to be this general consensus that something is on the horizon in the near term. Now, this hit very close to me in my circle, my inner circle. I had hoped and planned to show you all what I had been working on for Atlas Conscious Arts. But I was overcome by what I thought was just a regular bout of depression. And I was completely drained of all energy. And it was just this ominous feeling like of pointlessness, of whatever it is I was working on was just had to wait. and I was completely unproductive throughout the entire week. I barely was able to get out on my walker or do any other like physical exercise. It was really, and that would have been bad enough. It was just me, but my father landed in hospital, and a very close personal friend and colleague contacted me, and he had basically the same symptoms, and a whole group around my inner circle was suffering the same low energy drain. And specifically, my friend and colleague Wolfgang, who's our ecosystem guru, he said the last time he felt this way was before 9/11. That, of course, was 23 years ago. But he's absolutely convinced that because he's going through what he's going through, and the last time he was gone through anything like this was 23 years ago before that event, and he was describing it as what he thinks is coming is going to be 10 times bigger than 9/11. What exactly that is, he cannot say, because he's not a prophet. He's not a seer in that context. He sees energy and he feels energy, and he responds to shifts in energy in the field. And it was when he contacted me and he described what he was going through and why he feels he's going through it, that I thought, well, maybe it's not just me. Is it coincidence that my father landed in hospital the same time, and then everybody else in my circle seems to be going through and having these similar symptoms? And it's like this, it's like an energetic flu. It's very strange. And what I mean by that is just like this low energy, this being drained, this ominous, like there's something in the air, there's something on over the horizon, which is exactly what ended up naming this today's talk. I just thought it would be advantageous to bring this up with all of you and see if any of you were experiencing something similar. From what I gather, this is not a wholly isolated or wholly unique experience that I and my inner circle are going through. But at the same time, none of us can put our finger on what's coming, what's on the horizon. We cannot say definitively. And in looking online and seeing what others, psychics and others, have to say, they all have their various different ways of predicting the future and predicting events. No one seems to be able to put their finger on it, or they might claim that they can, but clearly there's some fog of war here. There's some obscuration to what's coming, and at the same time there's somehow an intuitive knowing that many of us have, that whatever it is, it's going to be significant, whatever that means. And it was just interesting, mere moments, maybe at max half an hour, an hour after we posted the topic for today, we got word that of the so-called assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life. Now, in the grand scheme of things, that's a relatively minor event. But is it connected somehow? Is it linked somehow to something greater, something bigger? Wolfgang seems to feel that whatever is coming is going to be of a global magnitude, that it's going to affect everyone. And it is possible that the events of yesterday with regards to the presidential candidate, former US President Donald Trump, whether you believe it was a false flag operation or you believe it was a legitimate attempt on his life, regardless, the effect may be that it is the pebble, the proverbial pebble that begins a landslide, an avalanche of precipitous events, which could lead to a serious disruption in the United States. And if a serious disruption in the United States would be felt globally, it would have global repercussions. Many have been talking about the imminent collapse of the global economic system, the global financial system, not least because of the incredible indebtedness of the United States. What would happen if civil unrest overtook the United States? This is actually how the news yesterday was presented to me. A good friend of mine who lives in the United States sent me a link to the video while I was out on my walk. I got home and I arrived home to news, and it was 30 minutes old at the time. And she sent it to me saying, well, my country's about to slide into civil war. That was her gut reaction to what took place. Azazel chimes in here and he says that he noticed that as well. He noticed something is on the horizon. He noticed, why don't I just pop in the, here. I'll pop the link in the chat and I'll throw it up on screen. And there it is there. I'm more than happy to make today's discussion as a discussion, because if any of you are feeling or have been feeling, especially since about, say, maybe Wednesday or Thursday, many people have been reporting online that they just have not been themselves this past week. And it would be interesting to compare notes and see if anybody has any insights that they have had access to. Because it's not about speculation, and it's certainly not about fear mongering. Because when we brought this up, individuals have reacted to this post and to this topic, saying, "Oh yeah, but we can't be afraid," and so on and so forth. And that's absolutely true. This is not about fear mongering. We're not here to encourage anybody to panic or start digging a bomb shelter in the backyard or anything like that. It's not about running out and hoarding gasoline and Campbell's soup and bottled water. These are and toilet paper, I guess. That was the big one during COVID, wasn't it? But changes are coming. And it was very disturbing, to me at least, especially considering the plan that I had to, launch a crowdfunding campaign in August, and the total lack of productivity. Like, I lost a week of productivity this week as a result of whatever is in the air that was basically draining me of all my energy. And it may be that now is just not the right time, or it may be that, well, who knows, maybe I'll have a stellar overproductive 2 or 3 weeks. Or it could be that whatever needs to happen needs to begin unfolding in order to contextualize, better frame any campaign that we pursue. Because surely any type of campaign or argument that we make for conscious arts, it's going to be very different if some major, significant, life-altering turn of events unfolds between now and August, or certainly through August, or certainly through to the end of the year, than running a campaign or attempting to run a campaign during, such an unfolding series of drastic changes will render such a campaign moot and altogether unsuccessful, because people will have other priorities. So all of this has been top of mind in the last few days. And it really, I had seriously considered canceling today's live stream. But rather than shying away from the topic, I felt better to give everyone an opportunity to perhaps exchange notes and share experiences, because after all, we might be able to help one another understand better. And as opposed to everyone thinking that it's just them, that it's just me, it's something I was going through, but to know that, well, others were going through it as well. And what, if anything, might it mean? And if it means what it might mean, what exactly does that mean for us moving forward in the larger context? Tiffany says, it's very unusual insomnia for myself, along with mental fatigue, which is also not normal. I've caught myself looking up to see where we are in the moon phase. One of the individuals that I looked into on YouTube, one of these astrologers, she had mentioned something about the new moon in Gemini. And she had made a whole bunch of associations with that. It just struck me that out of all the things that I was looking at, that was one of the ones that jumped out at me, because I happen to be a Gemini. And so but a number of different individuals had a number of different takes. But one of the ones that stuck out was the notion that that there are breakdowns on the way, that an imminent collapse of sorts is coming over the horizon, and that this collapse may precipitate a systemic collapse, a dominoing effect, and a systemic collapse that will lead to a great deal of hardship. We can't, of course, verify that, but what this particular warning or message or prediction came with was the caveat or the reminder that said, but it's okay, because what's going to come after the collapse, it's going to be a great improvement. Now, there's two things about that. One is that, of course, many people believe that what awaits humanity over the horizon is a golden age. And if there is a downturn followed by an upswing, many will associate that upswing with the golden age. Just as, depending on how drastic that downswing is, many will associate that collapse or downswing with the end of the world. You know, there's no getting around it. There's no avoiding it. People will graft onto events their own interpretations and their own expectations. And as we said, the apocalyptic predictions and expectations of the end times has been a cottage industry for humanity for 2,000 years. There is nothing suggesting or indicating that that is the case here and now. But considering my own individual direction and my purpose, my work, the direction that I had been planning to take for August, it may be that whatever needs to unfold first, followed by an upswing that Atlas Conscious Arts will play its role in. Because there needs to be an upswing, there needs to be a period of reconciliation, a period in which this humanity is given an opportunity to prepare for the ultimate inevitability. And this humanity is not prepared for that. By no stretch of the imagination has humanity been prepared. And I, for one, cannot believe or accept that I have lived the life that I have lived, and on the precipice of standing on the precipice of beginning my life's work, and having been prepared for that over a period of 50 years. Well, I know that the end is not coming now. That much I know. But I also know that in order to, for lack of a better word, in order to sell people on Atlas Conscious Arts and the importance of living life as an art form and introducing all that we have to introduce with regards to that. It is likely far more effective for the status quo to be in a state of serious decline. And that's what I've been working on. It's to make the case, right? To make the case, we can, here, let me see if I can, let's see if we do that primary monitor. Okay. So maybe we can, oops. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. I've been working on this presentation, and that would become a video. Oh, before we get into it, as Attlas says, humanity needs to ask to receive. And as you've said many times, they're not prepared in the slightest. Many of them know to ask, but what they're going to be asking for is the wrong thing, right? I mean, Christians and such. They're going to be praying for their salvation. They're going to be praying to be raptured. And Azazel agrees with that. Intuitively, he knows exactly what I'm getting at. Let me show you this and see what you guys think. Let's see how we can, let's get going. Let's see if it works. So we have binary duality and the law of the pendulum between black and white, us and them, 1 and 0, left and right, thesis and antitheses. Right? This should not be new to any of us, but this is the binary duality of, and the more this pendulum swings, the more the two sides get pushed to the extreme, and humanity is divided and conquered. And this is, what we call the fall into hell. This is humanity's fall into its present state. The goal is to return humanity to a trinary triunity and heal the divisions, right? This is an act of reconciliation. And by doing so, we expand to X marks the spot, and it marks the spot of unlimited potential. When you extend, right, and then you unite the binary system, and you get, right, a perfect 10, and you get the Latin numeral for 10, and this is all the X marks the spot. It's also the union of masculine and feminine. We have the blade and the chalice, and that's actually the shape of the chalice. And it's also the ark atop Mount Ararat. This particular glyph, this rune, this shape, it is also the conjunction of heart, mind, and the human spirit. And there's going to be somewhere in here, there's going to be a couple slides that aren't done. And I haven't, this might not be the order of how these slides go, but if there's a hell below, then there must be a heaven above. And whoops, that's this is a work in progress, so some of the animations are going to be a little wonky. Yeah, this is I'm trying to incorporate the Egyptian pharaonic symbols of the flail and the shepherd's crook, and the connection between heart, mind, and right, because that's the same shape. But all of this part is a work in progress. So here we have the heaven, they who crossed over into the earth to raise earth out of its hell. And of course, the Master of Masters, the one that people are perhaps most familiar with, this was his symbol. And his famous line, "I will teach you to be fishers of men." But this symbol is also the Alpha. And in its other orientation, it's where we get Omega. The shape, the symbol is Otala. It is the one that it arrives at last in the Futhark. It is the lightning bolts that descend, that Zeus hurls from atop Mount Olympus. And in Thor's hammer, it is the lightning that Thor commands with his famous hammer, Mjolnir. That's where Thor's hammer comes from. When we cross over these two halves of this shape, we get the we get DNA, and we also get the intertwining serpents of the staff of Hermes, or the caduceus of Mercury. It is a triunity of trinities, of Hume, Manas, and being. This, of course, is the triune human being. The 3-in-1 true human being. As above, the human spirit and heart mind, so below. Made in the image and likeness of God. A trinity, a triunity, 3-in-1. A true human being made in the image and likeness of God. That's what this symbol is. We have our Father who art in heaven. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth below as it is in heaven above, via conscious heart mind. We take a stand for conscious arts, and that's a stance, meaning a stanza. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The human spirit that stands, that stanza, the Word, that's meaning original, meaningful, imaginative, inspired and inspiring, and universal. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And below we have the substance. So above we have stanza, below we have substance. We have the inversion, and we have the fall into hell of works that are derivative, formulaic, mechanistic, degenerative AI and uninspired. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. That's the substance. That's the mechanical nature. So we have the stanza, the word, and we have substance. That is which is beneath. We have divine nature, we have mechanical nature. So the goal of conscious arts is to raise humanity back up via conscious arts, back into this alpha omega. And that's shape is Attlas, and the alpha and the omega, the conscious arts. And that's the all of that, which you've just outlined, which we've shared with you, is in this brand, is in this logo. All of that. And from that, we arrive at a 10 for conscious arts, which is the tentative name for this crowdfunding campaign. And that was a very rough, like, just not properly recorded, not properly timed, running through this. And it's like 90 seconds, right? So this should be, I should be able to tighten this up to less than a minute. But all of that meaning is contained and is behind this symbol, this logo, which is Attlas, Alpha and Omega. And there's even more here that we could get into, because, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out, especially when we're showing this stuff with Thor. And you see that the handle of the hammer, obviously the runes were derived from the tree of life, and that the handle of Thor's hammer is the central pillar of the tree of life. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that Thor is Odin's son. And Thor being Odin's son, right? Thor's the son. And if you take this shape, right? And then the cross, you get, this is the Chi Rio, or the Cairo, which is, of course, the Cairo is a symbol of Christ. The X, of course, is also a symbol of Christ. So we got some Tiffany says, looks great so far. Well, very well done. Beautiful. Thanks for that. So there's a lot going on, and there's so much going on that we could have spent a great deal more time spelling this all out. But, we won't, we don't have to, because it's there. It's all there. It's all in there. We only focus on the aspects that pertain directly to the brand and the enterprise that we are actively promoting, and that what we want people to have on top of mind when they support, right, Attlas Conscious Arts. And that's bringing that higher level imagination, intuition, inspiration, that which is inspired and is capable of inspiring others into the world through our works, through the human enterprise. But all that we have shared with you is in this logo. And my purpose here was to show and tell. And if anybody doubts, Atlas's ability to assist companies, organizations in imbuing their work with inspired purpose and meaning and universal meaning, and say, look what we did in 60 seconds with one logo. So it's like, okay, you can question our ability all you want. Just here it is. And we also going to point out and say, oh, and by the way, in terms of being able to work with what we have to work with, and being able to do things with being able to work on work with what we have to work with. It's like this video, everything you saw was done with PowerPoint. So Tiffany says, can you give an example how this would transform any given company? Okay, let's look at Disney. Let's look at what Disney's been doing. And all of its DEI checkboxes and all its ESG nonsense. And how it's completely ruined Star Wars. Well, how this would transform Disney is we would go in there and inspire the people who are there, or remove them and replace them with those who are inspired, and return inspiration and imagination and the universal truths back into the properties. And they can still have, we can still have diversity, we can still have all that does DEI, but not applied mechanically. I'll give you another example. You know how Boeing can't make planes anymore? Boeing can't make planes anymore. And people and whistleblowers in the company that have been going public and basically tattletaling on the company to the regulators of unsafe practices, and subpar safety standards and all the rest of it. It's because up until a few years ago, Boeing was run by the engineers. The CEO of Boeing went up through the ranks, through the engineering side of the company. So the priority at Boeing was the engineering. But when Boeing merged with McDonnell Douglas, I believe, there was a big merger, and when they merged, the other company's management style took precedent. The merged board of directors overruled the Boeing board members and said, no, we have a much better management, senior management suite, because our CEO comes up through the finance side. And when that merger took place, the engineers were essentially kicked out of the senior executive decision-making process and was replaced by the CEO and the CFO. And all the management decisions were now being governed by financial considerations, not engineering considerations. And ever since then, Boeing has been on a downward spiral and can't make planes anymore. Why is that? Because it should be self-evident. Honestly, it should be self-evident. And but in a slide, it's because of this. And in fact, I'm glad that we're having this discussion today, because one of these dualities, one of these dichotomies, has to be, instead of black and white, I think, well, I mean, one of these has to read profit and loss, because that's what the finance department is. And that's all the finance department cares about. Profit and loss, or revenue and expenses. And if you run your company with that as its foundation, your company is demonic, period. That's a fact. That's a fact. If you run your company as a mechanical binary duality as its foundation, then your company will be stripped of the human spirit. It'll be stripped of all humanity, and your company will be demonic. Look at McDonald's. McDonald's doesn't make food. You guys have seen the memes, right? You've seen the memes on Facebook and elsewhere, where people have so-called Happy Meals and whatever that have been sitting around for months, if not years, and it won't rot. Right? That's not food. If it doesn't rot, if the flies won't eat it, if mold won't grow on it, you cannot call it food. I don't know what you call it, but it's not food. Sure, it's technically edible. You can eat it, but why would you? If not even bacteria and mold will eat it. Well, the company that produces and sells it, what kind of company could it possibly be? And what could it possibly be doing except for what's on the screen right now? This is a fact. This is self-evident. This is indisputable. And anybody who would try to dispute it is living in complete delusion. They're living in complete fantasy land. They're in hell, they're in the matrix, and they don't know it. They refuse to accept it. So how would we transform McDonald's? I think we would transform McDonald's by breaking it up and causing it to no longer operate. That's how we could transform McDonald's. McDonald's, something like McDonald's, just has to be burned to the ground. Unless the board, unless we can completely eliminate the senior management and vote in a new board and completely transform the company from the ground up, beginning with whatever processes they do to create their ultra processed foodstuffs. I don't even know. I don't even. That's a right. So I mean, but the point is, this is the point. You have to move out of binary duality and into trinary triunity, right? And this is only the foundation. You have to get from binary duality to this. right? And ultimately, right, there's a reason why we eventually get here, right? And the whole reason why I want to include our friend the Pharaoh here, because here we have whoops, let's go with highlighter. Let's go back. Uh, oh, of course I chose yellow. There we go. Let's try red. Okay. So here we have, in one hand, we have the flail or the whip. And in the other hand, we have the shepherd's crook. Those are the two pillars that are crossed. Why we say cross your heart, and we have that expression, cross your heart and hope to die. Well, the whip is severity. Oh, that's terrible. I don't know why it's being so choppy. Anyway, it's severity and mercy. It's the two pillars of love. That's what the whip and the shepherd's crook represents, that the Pharaoh has crossed over his arms, and he's creating the shape of Attlas. Now, the top of the shape extends to the third eye. But in any case, the bringing severity and mercy to bear, and bringing consciousness to bear, conscious arts to bear on any enterprise, has the potential of raising it from binary duality and mechanical nature, raising it up to a higher level. So, again, coming back to what Tiffany asked here, examples of how we could transform companies. I mean, the examples are infinite in number, but the point is, we have to shift the emphasis from binary duality to a trinary human perspective, the human spirit. And it's not to say that it's easy. It's not easy. That's not the right word. Easy is not the right word. But it's not complicated. It's simple, really. It's simple. It's just reorienting your priorities. And of course, this is one of the reasons why I went and did an MBA 20 years ago. I needed to, and why I was an entrepreneur, and why I was a consultant for many years prior to and after that. Because it's a rubber meets the road type of stuff, type of work we need to do. It's all fine and good to say that the Christ has returned. But the Christ, the Cairo, or Chirio, depending on how you want to pronounce that. But this symbol, Otala, the one that comes at last, it's the last word. It's the final say. It's the last hurrah that humanity has. And if the Christ is not allowed to have its influence where the rubber meets the road in the economic and political machinations of humanity, then humanity cannot be prepared properly for what's coming. And that's why we have this rune, this brand that is an amalgamation, is a creation of these runes, these symbols. Because while, yes, it is true that the symbol of Atlas is that he holds the world on his shoulders, in truth, Atlas upholds the pillars of heaven and earth. Those are the pillars of Jachin and Boaz, the masculine and feminine, and obviously that embodies the reconciliation of all opposites, of all duality. Because when you uphold those pillars, you create the arch, which is the topmost aspect of this symbol, is that the pillars are crossed. It represents the union of masculine and feminine, the union of opposites, the reconciliation of opposites through the Christ, because the X, the cross, is the Christ's symbol. But then you have the hat, the topmost edifice of the temple, which is the upper Trinity. And we showed that, right? Because you have the upper Trinity and you have the lower Trinity, and you have the middle Trinity, which is the monad. So on the tree of life, you can take this symbol and superimpose it directly into the tree of life, and you have the upper Trinity, the middle Trinity, and the lower Trinity all represented in Attlas. And the Alpha and the Omega. Tiffany says, try unity. I would love to bear witness to this globally. I don't feel I'll be here to see it, unfortunately. I may be part of the final slide, though, because we've all been sliding for a while now. It is very likely that what I have to do has to be completed by 2040. That's 16 years away. Where do I get that number, 2040? It's a long story. But it has to do with a fellow you might be familiar with. And we've discussed him before, Archaics. Jason, I always forget his last name, but he has his Archaics channel on YouTube, and he's written I don't know how many books. He's been writing books for over 20 years. I think he published his first book in 2004. Might be wrong on that, but I know he's been publishing books regularly for the past 2 decades before he really started getting into YouTube. And he has his theory around what he calls the Phoenix phenomenon, and it unfolds about every 138 years. So the last Phoenix event was in 1902, and he's proposing the next one. That therefore you add 138 to 1902, and you get 2040. So 2040 is the next big date. So that's not very long. That's not very far away. All right, 16 years will go by in a heartbeat. And when it comes to inspiration, when it comes to transformation, and revolutionizing things, the spirit of humanity can work wonders. God can work miracles in incredibly short periods of time. So when you say that you're not going to be around to see it, well, hopefully you will. At least, the beginnings of it. Now, is it going to take on is it going to be accepted everywhere? Is it going to be reflected everywhere? Is everybody going to jump on the bandwagon? Probably not. But they don't need to. Having said that, the early adopters, when they show the success that comes by taking a trinary approach as opposed to a binary one, this represents a tremendous upgrade, a tremendous evolutionary step. You're switching from mechanical nature to divine nature. You cannot make that shift. You cannot make that upgrade and not reap the rewards and not reap the benefits. And when others see that they're getting left behind, they will perhaps begrudgingly, or perhaps with some alarm and some sense of fear getting left behind, fear of missing out, right? What do they call that? FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. They will come along. Do things have to get worse before they can get better? This is the question, and this is the whole point of today's live stream that we began with. Something is on the horizon, and many people think that what's on the horizon is going to be a turn for the worse. And if it is a turn for the worse, I've often said the worse things get, the better off we will be. Because it will be there will be larger numbers of people, and people in power, people with resources, people that have a lot to lose, will recognize that the old methodology, the old paradigm simply does not work, that it's unsustainable, and that it is incompatible with the higher aspirations of humanity. And that humanity is bumping up against the glass ceiling of its potential to be a true humanity, an enlightened humanity. No humanity can be an enlightened humanity if it's trapped in binary duality. This is a self-evident fact. The fact that they called the 18th and 19th century the Enlightenment is one of the most heinous frauds ever perpetrated, certainly in Western civilization. That the explosion of materialist science, they referred to themselves as the Enlightenment. It was during that period of time that this humanity fell more asleep than it had at any time for thousands of years. The more we believed that we were unlocking the secrets of the universe, the more we were putting ourselves deeper and deeper into hypnosis. Everything from Darwin's Origin of the Species through, Karl Marx, and everything in between. All of materialist science, as a matter of fact. So, sure, it allowed us to have this so-called technological wonder that we live in today, and all these gadgets and this industrial revolution and all the rest of it, which, can anybody really argue that all of that mechanicity hasn't been like squeezing all the humanity out of humanity? That it's been squeezing the human spirit out of the equation? Or it's been desperately trying, and it's getting better at it. And now you see humanity fighting back. You see humanity rebelling against that the human spirit cannot and will not be squeezed out of its own existence, of its own game. This world, this reality, belongs to the human spirit. Yes, it belongs to mechanical nature, but its purpose for existence is the human spirit. Mechanical nature doesn't exist in and of and for itself. No machine has ever been built or constructed or self-organized for its own sake. No machine is capable of doing that. Show me the machine that exists purely for its own sake, or show me the machine that built itself purely for its own sake. Machines have utility. They exist for a reason, for a purpose, and that purpose is always to serve. There is no machine that exists for the purpose of its own recreation, for its own amusement. Not even the Black Lodge, not even ego, as remarkable as that may seem. You see, this is not difficult. This does not require anyone to have a PhD in philosophy or in theology or to have memorized the Bhagavad Gita or the Bible for that matter. Right? This is self-evident. This is just fact. This is objective reality. And it doesn't take much to explain it and lay it out on the line. Right? I can stand in a room of 12 movers and shakers. I can stand in front of an audience at the World Economic Forum. I can stand in the boardroom of boards of directors, or I can stand on a stage in front of an audience of hundreds of thousands, or on television or on the internet in front of an audience of millions, and say the same words. I don't have to lie. I don't have to massage my message. I don't have to be clever and try to, present it in a way that they're going to understand it, it's going to speak to them. No, show me the machine that exists for its own sake. I'll wait. Why would mechanical nature be any different? And if all machines serve humanity and the human spirit, why would our bodies be any different? Why would our personality be any different? If you play a video game, and in that game world, you have to embody a character, and that character serves as a vehicle, as a vessel, so that you can play the game in the game world, why would this character of yours be any different? And why would this world be any different? Yeah, exactly. And I'll wait. And if it's 10 uncomfortably long minutes, then it's 10 uncomfortably long minutes. But I have patience. Look, I've been waiting 50 years to get to this point. I can wait another 5 years. The question is, are they ready? Are they ready to hear the truth? Well, if the big machine that they've built is breaking down and is no longer serving humanity, it's no longer serving its purpose. And this could very well be what is on the horizon. This could be that ominous looming breakdown or precipitous collapse, this domino effect or snowballing avalanche. It could be what must happen in order for the powers that be and the general public to be willing to hear and see an alternative. And it might be that they're ready and willing to, either support, if not altogether embrace, an alternative. To put the human spirit back into the human adventure. To put the human spirit back into the human enterprise. Before we well and truly run out of time. Before it's well and truly too late. Should we have an opportunity to join the universal brotherhood of enlightened humanities? People have been dreaming about this, and we say dreaming in a generous sort of way, but really they've been fantasizing about this right ever since the 60s in Star Trek, when Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future, the vision of a humanity that was a part of something called the United Federation of Planets, to boldly go where no man has gone before. And for generations, people saw that vision and just their eyes lit up. And here we are in 2024, and we are no closer to accomplishing that and achieving that. And we won't be, because we are bouncing off the glass ceiling of materialist science. Because we're trapped in the ping pong match, in the pong match between binary duality. And an enlightened humanity must be enlightened. The science must be enlightened. It must be it must be based on a trinary paradigm. Because the binary paradigm is the limit, the hard-coded limit of the simulation, of the matrix. And genuine science, pure science, is metaphysical, not physical. You must, in order to have any reasonable comprehension and understanding of the rules and laws governing the simulation, you must be able to step outside of the simulation and observe the underlying code that the simulation is based on. If you're trying to observe that code from inside the simulation, then you're going to be bound by the limits of your own ability to perceive. And invariably, materialist scientists invariably rely on their rational mind, their mechanical intellect. But mechanical intellect is defined by binary duality, which makes it a part of the simulation. It is simulated intelligence. It's not true intelligence. It's already artificial intelligence, our rational mind is. So you're trying to understand a binary dualistic reality with a limited binary dualistic mechanical mind. And you get caught in these endless terminal loops, these paradoxes, and all of these dead ends where everything becomes self-referential and you can't step outside of it in order to see it from a trinary perspective, from the perspective of the third eye, from the perspective of awakened consciousness. And those who do are labeled madmen. People like Nikola Tesla, Walter Russell, and most recently Terence Howard. Because, of course, he's not indoctrinated. He's not formally educated in physics or mathematics. So he doesn't have all of the language and tools to be able to argue and explain and describe in a way that everybody trapped in their rational mind can understand. He's coming at it from a different place, a higher place. And in very real terms, he's coming at it from a more simple place. Even as it's infinitely more complex. But he's able to grasp it and see it and work with it in a simple way. Because that's the capacity of consciousness. Because consciousness is a sixth dimensional faculty. And he's observing fourth dimensional phenomena, which is the foundation of the three-dimensional phenomena. But he's using a sixth dimensional faculty. Whereas the mind is only a fifth dimensional faculty. But even then, that fifth dimensional faculty, if it's filtered through the brain and the rational mechanicity of that machine, it's very much gets reduced to a three-dimensional phenomena. You know, notwithstanding the theoretical mathematicians and all the wonderful stuff that they can do with the language of mathematics. Because I'm also not a mathematician. I can't speak that language. Just like I'm not a musician, I can't speak that language. But it's interesting. The language I can speak I'm not a I can't speak ancient Norse, right? I don't know the Futhark off by heart. I don't know Norse mythology like the back of my hand. I haven't memorized the Bible. But what I do know is I know what I know. I see what I see. And symbols are symbols. And pictures are pictures. And presented in a simple way, right? It's, it is what it is. And it is precisely that I speak a language which is universal, and that everything informs me, everything instructs me. How many times have you heard me say the living, breathing word of God is all around us and within us? We just have to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear it. This is what the ancients called the Book of Thoth, which was never written down on papyrus or parchment or clay tablets. Thoth, Mercury, Hermes Trismegistus, the messenger of the gods, that was his message. Because at the end of a civilization, at the end of a humanity, you cannot preserve the teachings in any kind of mediated form. What guarantees do you have that it will survive? Even the Great Pyramid, which survived the cataclysm, because the Great Pyramid was pre-flood. Even the Great Pyramid, which survived, thousands of years later, people were still arguing about what it meant, what it means, and what it's for, what its true purpose is. And it's just a pyramid. Imagine trying to preserve a written law or a written, right? It's so the teacher who comes at last has no attachments to scripture, has no attachments to what the prophets said and what others said who came before him. The one who comes at last is here to teach one teaching and one teaching alone. That the word of God is written all around you and within you. And no matter what happens, no matter what calamity befalls humanity, no matter what comes over the horizon and shatters humanity, these relationships will remain. Lightning will still be lightning. Art, Thor, the hammer, the lightning, these will not change. There will still be lightning in the next humanity. There will still be mountains. There will still be hammers. There will still be DNA. These timeless universal symbols and the teachings from the Book of Thoth will still be present because the Book of Thoth is all around us and within us. It cannot be erased. It cannot be forgotten. Well, it can be forgotten, but it can be rediscovered. It can be relearned. It can reemerge. These timeless universal symbols, these timeless universal truths, objective truths from the world of archetypes, the seventh dimension from our point of view, but the first dimension of manifest reality. The unformed essences of form will still be there at the foundation of all reality and at the foundation of you and at the foundation of me. So that when all hard drives are wiped clean, when there is no electrical grid, when all megalithic structures that have any kind of hieroglyphs on them are completely turn to dust, and when all paper and books and libraries are utterly incinerated or buried under miles of rubble, what will humanity do then? Where will humanity turn? Obviously, to the sky, to the stars, and to all of the symbols and all the stories around them, and their oral history and their heritage and things like the Alm of Life. Because there will still be water, will still swirl a certain way down a drain, and hurricanes will have certain patterns, and snail shells will still have a certain shape, and galaxies will still look that way, and cream and coffee will still swirl the same way. Not that they're going to have coffee or cream. But humanity must be prepared for this. Humanity must be geared to this. And humanity currently is not geared for this. Humanity is geared and conditioned to identification and attachment and all of its so-called information in the information age. And none of that will survive a calamity. Tiffany says, so with the impending blank hanging around in the air, globally and on many levels, what can we start doing? What needs to be created? Because the suffering seems too much at this point. And she says, I'm just throwing that out there for discussion. You know, last week we based our talk on the Beatles song, Let It Be. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing there in front of me with these words of wisdom, let it be. And what better advice could we give than that which we gave last week? How do you prepare for the unknown? You prepare yourself for anything. And how do you prepare yourself for anything? By allowing, by letting it be, by detaching yourself from any outcomes and from any desired outcomes, and detaching yourself from everything that you have and everything that you own and everything that you are and everything that you hoped and desired to be. And instead, put yourself into this place of pure being, pure allowing. Because as we said last week, let it be is so let it be. It is what it is, so let it be. It is what it is like saying, I am that I am. Eheye Asher Eheye, the holy name of God. Because God is everywhere. God is everything. Let it be. Let God be. God knows better than you or I. Right? I can't compare what I think I know with what God knows. Right? I haven't been given insight. I have no insight into what's coming because I don't need to know. Why? Because I need to focus on no matter what comes, that's God's will. And if it's God's will, I'm going to let it be. I'm going to let God be. God is what it is. He is who he is. It is what it is. So let it be what it is. Let it be. And that's how you prepare. And then you're prepared for anything. Good, bad, catastrophic, precipitous, destructive, whatever it is. It is what it is. Do you need to build a bunker? Do you need to go out and hoard gasoline and bottled water and toilet paper? Well, you do what you need to do. I'm doing none of those things. Because number one, I'm not being told to do that. And number two, I'm not going to act out of fear. And I'm not going to act out of identification and attachment to this physical body. If I'm told to go and take measures, then I'll go and do that. If my innermost being tells me to do that, then I will do that, because we have to be practical. But don't second guess and overthink and cover your bases, because all those people with bunkers, living out in the desert in California, and they have underground bunkers with hundreds of thousands of cans of Campbell's soup and millions of rounds of ammunition. One of the things that I heard might be on the horizon is more than one person has predicted the big one is going to hit California in the summer of 2024. And you know what I mean by the big one, the big earthquake, the big catastrophic earthquake that even geologists have been predicting for decades. There are more than one person out there who are predicting that's going to hit California before the end of the summer. Well, all those people in their underground bunkers, how well do you think they're going to fare? And incidentally, I happened to stumble across a map, a seismological map of California for the past 30 days. There was something like 9,000 earthquakes in California over the past 30 days. I don't know how normal that is, but it just serendipitously just showed up out of nowhere. So, I'm not making that prediction. I'm just saying that others have made that prediction. And all those people who have so-called prepared, the doomsday preppers, and that they've prepared by building underground bunkers, well, those underground bunkers are not going to fare very well in an earthquake scenario. If the earthquake is severe enough. So Tiffany says, all right, so as I felt for years, when I see the mushroom cloud, I'll run toward it, not away from it. I personally would not run toward the mushroom cloud, but that's just me. But I'm also not going to run away from it necessarily either. So just, it is what it is. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm going to keep doing what I'm told to do. That's my job. That's my job. But I have faith that, in spite of everything, I have faith that God knows what he's doing, and that there's a plan for this humanity. I know that I'm part of that plan. I just know that. I've known that since I was a kid. Exactly what that plan is and exactly what part I have to play is a process of self-discovery. It's a process, it's part of what makes my life so interesting, and what makes my work so rewarding and fulfilling is that it's a process of discovery. It's a process of inspiration. And it's also a process of surrender. I don't know how valuable that approach will be for you in your life and your work. But for me, it's proven to be essential, because the more I try to get in the way of it, the more I allow my petty needs and desires and fears and so on to dictate what I do and how I do it, the more I just dig myself deeper into pain and suffering and doubt and anxiety and depression and all the rest of it. It really is a process of letting go and letting God. And even if you're not here to play some sort of pinnacle role in what's unfolding over the next few months and years, you are here to do something. You are here for a purpose. Everyone is. Everyone. And maybe that purpose revolves entirely around you. Maybe that's all that you're really capable of. Maybe you're here to overcome some challenge that you face as an individual. And that in overcoming that challenge, you may become a source of inspiration for the people around you. Or maybe by overcoming that challenge, that obstacle, whatever it is, maybe in overcoming that, you unlock some new ability, capability, potential, or inspiration to go and do something else now, because you've freed yourself up and you're free now to express yourself. You're inspired to go off in a new direction and do something new and exciting and interesting. And again, as you are inspired, you have the potential to inspire others. And let me tell you that that's more than enough for the average person to accomplish. That's more than enough. That's a wonderful, beautiful life's purpose, to overcome one's own shortcomings, defects, handicaps, challenges, demons, whatever you want to call it, that you face, those things that hinder your progress, the things that prevent you from being the best person you can be. You overcome those and you start expressing that higher, better, best version of yourself. Then the things that higher self will accomplish in the world through you, that's what more could you ask for? And the fulfillment that you will get from that, and how you will inspire others, and how your works will find legs in the world. And like, that old cliche about dropping a pebble in a pond and the ripples rippling out from the pebble that's dropped in the pond. You don't even know how your works will affect people potentially for generations. For generations. There are people today being inspired by obscure researchers or writers, historians, authors, poets that did their work hundreds of years ago. There are people today being inspired and learning and developing a whole new science based on the works of Walter Russell, Nikola Tesla, and others that mainstream science ignores. But a whole new science is being developed and being birthed today because of the work of these obscure, marginalized men. At least one of them died penniless, right? Nikola Tesla. And And generations later, young scientists who are turning their back on the established materialist science are discovering anti-gravity and zero-point energy and all of these incredible discoveries, levitation and everything, based on the pebble that was dropped in the pond generations ago. So, be, no matter what happens, no matter what's coming over the horizon, let it be, so that you can be. And search yourself for how to respond to whatever is coming over the horizon, whatever shows up. How we respond to it is what matters. Are we going to react to it with fear, with envy, with pride? Are we going to react to it in the same old mechanical way? Are we going to reject it? Are we going to run away from it or run towards it? Or are we just going to let it be and let ourselves be in the face of it and allow our relationship to it to emerge and blossom and be self-evident, and allow the book of Tot to speak to us, so that through our life and our works, we write our own chapters in the book of Tot, so that our life becomes a living scripture and our works are inscribed in the book of life. This is a real thing, by the way, because many mystics talk about the Akashic records. And Rudolf Steiner, most of his works were a result of him going into the astral plane and studying directly from the Akashic records. The Akashic records are literally the fifth dimensional book of life, the recorded history of all conscious experience. So in your words and works, you are literally writing the book of life. And because time is an illusion and past and future are all present, you can, in a sense, read the book of life all around you and within you and draw from it anything and everything that you need to know to accomplish that which you are here to do as a servant, as a mechanical human machine, a vessel, a vehicle for your innermost being, your true self. All of that and so much more is embodied in this symbol. Because here we have the three trinities, and we have the arms and the legs of a human machine, and the upper trinity. It's like everything you need to know is here on the screen. And we walked you through step by step everything that's in this symbol, including the fact that it's the Alpha and the Omega and the Cheerio and all the rest of it. This is what the messenger who comes at last is here to do. This is what the messenger who comes at last is here to give humanity. And why my parents named me Attila, and why my true self's name is Attlas. And why we work for the fire of fire and the light of lights. Looks, the light, God light, the lightning that Odin's son, Thor, commands, that comes from on high, from art, from our Father who art in heaven. Art. Benjamin says, that is true. Your discoveries about overcoming the demon of fear have changed my life tremendously. Some of your insights have helped me shed light on what has puzzled me in the spiritual journey. Your life is an inspiration for people like me who seek answers. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Benjamin, thank you so much for being here and joining our live streams and so often bringing your knowledge of scripture to bear on the conversation at hand, because you always seem ready with the right biblical stories, parables, quotes, etc. Yes, and as for being an inspiration to others, well, I hope that my work there has only just begun. In fact, I know it's only just begun. But it's a process, and Rome wasn't built in a day. And the alm of life, right? It was we've gone over this many, many, many times. And but if part of that process means helping others become an inspiration in their own right, anybody who is inspired to overcome what they face as a result of bearing witness to me facing what I face, well, then you see the ripples on the pond, and why this symbol that we showed you earlier, it's also very important to recognize in the Christian context. This is a very important symbol to Christians, including early Christians. And that this symbol, right, and the relationship between that symbol and the Alpha and the Omega. But you being inspired by me allows you to become an embodiment of your higher self, to be the best that you can be, to inspire others. You see? This is what Jesus meant when he says, I will teach you to be fishers of men. This statement never had anything to do with belief or making converts to Christianity. I am ruled by my innermost being. I live in belief. To be in leaf means willingly. Belief, as two words, I think we've gone through this before, but it's good to recap. Okay? Belief. This is the origin of the word. You see this? This is a space. There is a space here. This means to be willingly. That's what this term means. Somehow, somewhere along the line, to be willingly got turned into to think. But when that change was made, the powers that be eliminated this space, and they out of belief became one word. And what I argue is that God made sure to remove this space so that he would leave a clue for us that you cannot spell the one word belief without spelling the word belie, which means to be in falsehood. Now look at the genius of this and how to be willingly was transformed into to be in falsehood, to be in ignorance, to be in hypnosis. And how cleverly the Black Lodge made this change, but also how genius it was for God to make sure that if they were going to degenerate this word, that he would give us a clue as to its true meaning so that we could restore its true meaning. And as we restore that true meaning, part of that restoration is to comprehend what Jesus meant when he says, I will teach you to be fishers of men. A fisherman cannot force a fish into a net. A fisherman cannot force a fish to bite on a lure or bite on bait. A fish must do so willingly. A man, an individual, must give themselves willingly to Christ, their innermost intimate Christ, their innermost intimate Alpha and Omega. To become Attlas, right? To become one with a human spirit via heart mind. To be one of infinite, a triunity and infinite potential. This is true belief. 2 words. To give oneself, to be, to one's innermost being. In other words, to know, not to think, not to believe, not to have blind faith, but to have true faith, to be able to testify, to experience, to know, to be one with, to give oneself willingly into the great net that is the Alpha and Omega that casts its net through the entire universe. This is what it means to be a fisher of men. To be one who is in spirit. Inspired, someone who is in spirit, inspired, and someone who is inspiring to others. Inspiring others to likewise follow them, follow in their footsteps, and likewise become one with their human spirit. The Holy Spirit, which, as we know, going back, I got to go the other way here, was the masculine and feminine, the divine masculine and the divine feminine. That is the Holy Grail, and that is the Ark of the Covenant that rests upon Mount Ararat. So how do you prepare yourself for whatever's coming? You build the Ark, the Holy Grail. Where is that? That's in here. Because one who is like this, a living embodiment of the Holy Spirit, a living embodiment of the human spirit, inspired and inspiring others. That's an inspirational human being. That is a fisher of men. And that's what Jesus meant. Doesn't mean you have to go out and be a teacher. Doesn't mean you have to go and give classes or lectures or courses or, whatever. No. Yeah. Benjamin gives us this very pertinent line from Scripture. Jesus replies, when you make the two into one, when you make the inner as the outer and the upper as the lower, and when you make male and female into a single one, so that the male shall not be male and the female shall not be female, then you will enter the kingdom. Because the union of masculine and feminine is the divine androgen. That's the Christ. And the union of the inner and the outer, when the outer vessel reflects the inner, hang on a second. Okay. That's the Grail, the Holy Grail. Yeah, the quote above seems similar to what I'm showing. Not similar, but exact. It's not similar, it's exactly what I'm showing. Exactly. Because look at the cup, look at the Grail. What does the Grail hold? The blood of Christ, the life force of the Christ. And what does a cup do? A Grail. It serves what is inside. It is a vessel of service. It is a vessel that pours forth, that gives unto others. That's what an ark does. It stores, it carries, but then it also liberates and lets free. The Grail, the Holy Grail, cannot be separated from the Christ. The two are intimately connected. And what is it said about the Holy Grail? The Holy Grail grants immortal life. Because surely that's when one receives, when one enters the kingdom. But everything that we're talking about here, everything that the scripture embodies, right? It's right here in the when we look to the pharaohs, the god kings, the Christified kings of Egypt. And why they were given these incredible sarcophagi and why they were buried, their bodies mummified, because they were Christified masters to be able to come and reclaim their body at a later date because they were immortal. They had achieved immortality. And their sarcophagi were made with gold in the way that you see in order to reflect outwardly that which they were internally. Because Christified masters, they glow with a resplendence. There's a reason why. Like, people weren't stupid. Later on, they became more ignorant and they lost their ability to discern between a genuine God man and a fake, a fraud. But a Christified master, at that time, people were more clairvoyant. They could tell that this was a God man. This was a Christified master. In the same way that Jesus simply astounded the masses, not just with his miracles, but his very presence. And he scared the living hell out of the Pharisees and everybody who was threatened by him. But in terms of a brand, in terms of what we are here to accomplish, well, let's step back here. Let's step back here too. When you make the inner as the outer, the upper as the lower, it is in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. This is our earthen vessel, our hume, as it is in heaven. And it is done so through our manas, through our divine mind, our heart mind, our conscious heart mind. That's manas. This is how we become 3 in 1. Made in the image and likeness of God. Then we will enter the kingdom. And thank you, Benjamin, for giving us this quote, because we might have to use it in our presentation. But it's right here. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to have to feel the way I'm feeling. Hopefully I'll be more productive again and get on with taking this to the next level. But in the meantime, we hope all of you have a good week ahead of you, and we'll open it up to any questions or comments. I don't think we have too much more to say on the subject, other than, prepare yourself for what's coming. Recall what we talked about last week, to let it be. And Benjamin says, yeah, that came from a Gnostic text, the Gospel of Thomas, saying 22. I also believe that, if I'm not mistaken, it's also from the Gospel of Thomas. No, it's not the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip. Or maybe it's Thomas. It's either Thomas or Philip, I can't remember which, that says, if you bring forth that which is within you, then that which is within you will save you. If you do not bring forth that which is within you, that which is within you will destroy you. I can't remember if that's Gospel of Philip or Gospel of Thomas, but it's also one of the Gnostic Gospels. I know that. But yeah, thanks for sharing, Benjamin. As always, your scriptural references are always right on point. Does anybody have any other questions or comments to share before we call it a day here? Mugaboo says, thank you, Attlas. May the hand of God guide and protect us all. Indeed, so be it, Mugaboo. Thank you. So be it. Going to keep plugging away at this presentation. I'm really being challenged by the Egyptian pharaoh and the organization of the slides, because right now they're sort of, it's not that they're all over the place, it's just there's a definite flow from one to the other. But in order to make this Egyptian one fit, I may have to reorganize and reorder them a little bit to get a better flow. but we'll see. I'm sure it'll come to me. It's just everything has been like pulling teeth. The second half of this week, it's been pretty brutal. Because essentially, like I was saying, my symptoms have been basically like depression, and it's been very, very hard to be productive. And that's why this is not in a better state than what I had hoped it to be in time for today. And but I'm confident that it'll shape up in time for when it actually needs to launch. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. So if you have been feeling down or feeling low energy or whatever it is you've been facing, rest assured you're not alone. I think many, many people have been going through something. And again, I hope and pray for all of us that whatever is showing up, we know that everything happens for a reason. We put our faith and trust in God, and that we just let it be and focus on following your own innermost still soft voice. Follow your own intuition. Try not to panic. Try not to react. And let things unfold as they need to unfold. And then do your best to do your part in accordance with the will of your innermost, your higher self. And everything will work out the way it needs to. Any more comments or questions? Anyone? We'll give you a couple more minutes to type away, and then we'll call it a day. Of course, for those of you living in the United States, I do hope and pray that the events of the last 24 hours I hope that it leads to a more civil discourse. But if things need to get worse before they can get better, and that the binary duality and opposition in the American political system needs to if it really needs to precipitate the collapse, then I mean, I just hope and pray that it won't be, super violent or cost many lives or destruction or pain and suffering. I hope that cooler heads will prevail and that they will see the light before it's too late. That they will see the light without things having to get to such a disastrous place, if you know what I mean. I do pray for that. I hope that whatever changes are coming, they can come, they can take place, and that people can recognize that they need a better way, that it's time to upgrade, that it's time to that we can't keep doing the same old thing the same old way and expect a different result. Benjamin says, they say that if they assassinate Trump, it could cause a civil war in the US. Well, it had they been successful, or as you say, it would definitely lead to a tremendous uprising of anger. And, as I say, I hope that the way things are panning out, that cooler heads will prevail and that a predominant feeling of, reconciliation or recognition that, hey, things are getting out of hand, right? We can't go around that political violence is not the answer, because that type of all-out conflict, if the venom and vehemence between political sides, if that is allowed to explode, then it could lead to a great deal of destruction, and the ripple effects of that would be felt around the world. No question. And I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope it doesn't have to come to that. I hope that people wake up and they realize, and look, if it does come to that, then I will be up 24 hours a day getting Attlas Conscious Arts off the ground and getting the message out as a counter force to that, and say, look, it's time to heal the divisions. It's time to upgrade humanity. This binary duality shit, this is not gonna take us to where we want to go. This is only going to take us further and further and deeper into hell. And the proof is in the pudding. If there's a civil war in the US, I don't know what more proof people need than that. I mean, they already have the equivalent in Israel and Gaza, do they not? They already have the equivalent in Russia and Ukraine. So, I mean, what more evidence do you need? We have thousands of years of evidence and case studies that it just doesn't work. That it's this big machine that serves its own interest, but that no genuine machine is ever meant to do that. So Benjamin says, I think it is not a coincidence the United States is spelled as us because they are us. Yeah, I don't think that's a coincidence either. I also don't think it's a coincidence that it incorporates one half of Otala, because the S. Remember a few weeks back, I was telling you guys about the Hungarian letter SZ. Anyway, we'll leave it for another time. Benjamin says the shooter was found that he was registered as a Republican voter. It's odd. That's why a lot of people are saying this is like a false flag operation. I don't know. I'll leave the conspiracy theory to the conspiracy theorists. If they're trying to garner sympathy for Trump, they were drawing parallels between when Reagan was shot and how Reagan's popularity shot up through the polls after he was shot, after his attempted assassination. So it could be that this was all orchestrated. I don't know. It could very well be that. I'm not proposing that. It's just many people are proposing many things. We live in a conspiratorial time. We live in a time when it is prudent not to listen to what mainstream media says. Just as a point of fact, it is prudent not to take anything that we see on TV at face value. So it could be anything, right? So they could have all sorts of different reasons and strategies behind what's unfolding. So who knows? We've also heard stories that people saw this fellow climbing up onto the roof and then they reported it to Secret Service. The Secret Service did nothing. And, it's there's going to be all kinds of stuff coming out after this, rest assured. So I don't need to speculate about this. A lot of other people are going to be doing the speculating for me. So who knows what the real truth is in this case. But what we do know is that there will be fallout. There will be consequences. The question is, in which direction will they go? That's the only question. But this will change things. The question is, in what way and what's going to be the ultimate outcome? That's all. Okay, everyone. I want to thank you all for spending this afternoon with me together again. And hopefully, everyone's energy will start picking up later today or tomorrow or early next week. And that we'll all be back up to speed. And that if whatever is unfolding, whatever is coming over the horizon arrives, again, hopefully we'll all be in a better state of mind, and we'll just allow it, let it be, and do what we need to do in accordance with our innermost being. I look forward to seeing you all next weekend. Hopefully I have more interesting things to talk about and show you at that time. In the meantime, take care, be well. For you and your family, keep enjoying the summer as best you can. And as always, I want to wish you all my customary farewell. Inferential peace. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next week.